Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order the regular planning board meeting of March the 2nd, 2022 at 9 a.m. We have one in. We do have a quorum. We have 4 of the 5 members available. Uh, March the 3rd, what did I say?
You said the second.
March the 3rd. Our chairman, Mr. Larkin's unavailable today, so I will be chairing in his place. So we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Amen.
First of all, it looks like we got something new on the agenda. Before we talk about the agenda, does any member of the planning board have a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest with regard to any item on the agenda? And if so, please state so at this time. I guess I'll just go down the line.
No.
No. Me, no. No.
No.
Okay, all no. Thank you. We have today's agenda. Anyone like to make a motion to approve the agenda or amend the agenda?
Motion to approve.
A second. All in favor?
Aye.
The agenda as written is approved. Before we take up business, any public comments at this time? If please state your name and address so we know it. And you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Forrester, 110 Crooked Gully Circle. My comments with regard to the proposed revisions to the sign ordinance in the relative to the residential zone districts. While I recognize the need for a change in the ordinance to permit signs for commercial entities, such as was being proposed by Bill Clark Holmes. My concern, and I submitted a memo to, I don't know if you all have seen it or not, and I don't intend to read it, but the salient parts of it really deal with 11.8, 11.3, which deal with signs in the residential zone districts, and the need for corrections and revisions, not just with regard to the commercial, but overall. For instance, the use of the word subdivision poses problems in that subdivision is defined in the UDO as both it's used as both a verb and a noun, and the definition includes 2 or more lots, which means the signs would be applicable to 2 or more lots. A subdivision containing 2 or more lots. In addition, I suggest that could be remedied by changing the word subdivision to some other word that eliminates that possibility. The second comment is that the language doesn't distinguish between overall subdivisions and subdivisions within subdivisions, which we have in abundance. And I think it should distinguish between the 2 of them. The state statute does. Also, there's no language requiring entrance signs where they be located. They say they're entitled to have 2 at every entry, but not at every entry. They're entitled. It doesn't say where they have to be located. They should say they should be located at the entry to the subdivisions. Also, there's no provision for measurement as to the height of the sign, as to where it starts from.
30 seconds.
Okay. Specifically with regard to commercial, the use of the term facility poses problems, and that I've set forth in that memorandum. It's not defined in the UDO. And lastly, there's no provision for directional signs within a subdivision. Once again, it doesn't say where that commercial sign has to be located, but for instance, on Old Georgetown Road or on Sunset Boulevard, there's no sign for a commercial entity that may be included within a larger subdivision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item of business is the published minutes of the regular planning board meeting of February 3rd, 2022. I do have some written comments that Mr. Larkin sent us. I think Chad just passed out, that I'll read off first and then go down the row and see if anybody else has comments. Pete had two comments under A, new business. He says, under new business, Shoreline Building Incorporated, site plan approval, page 3, fifth paragraph. I was under the impression that NC DOT would be responsible for the cost of new, apparently, future deceleration lane and not the developer. I could easily be incorrect on that. And his second comment under, also in the sixth paragraph at the same page, I believe the wording deceleration lane might be incorrect. And the words NC DOT dedicated right away should be substituted. Any other issues with the minutes going down the line?
No. I think those are two
points.
salient points that we need to address.
I agree.
I do too. Yes, I
I
agree.
guess my only other comment was, the way I recall it at least, on the first item, paragraph 5, I guess it is. The way I understand it is that NC DOT mandates the changes, developer pays for the changes, and then NC DOT takes them over.
That is correct.
That's the way I understood it, so that's the correct.
That is
So I
correct.
guess we need to rewrite, well, I don't know if we need to rewrite it.
No, it doesn't need to be rewritten. I'll just get with Pete. I think
Right.
it was just kind of a confusion, but the way that DOT, you're exactly right, Mr. Chair, that they dictate the changes.
Right.
It's up to the developer to implement and install those changes.
Is there an inspection and approval then? In other words,
Probably
if
from
they say
them.
this needs to be done and the developer does something, does
It'll be,
NC DOT come in at the end and say, yes, it's right, now
it'll
we
be for
take it?
them. For a great
Right.
example is what's going on around the sanctuary. You're seeing some lane closures. You're seeing some improvements up at the intersection of Georgetown and 903. Those are part of the TIA installations that were required to do, that DOT provided for Bill Clark Homes as they got through X phase of their development. So you're seeing those being installed right now. So I think DOT comes down and checks it at some point. I don't know when.
Because
Yeah.
it's theirs after they accept it.
Correct.
So I guess making sure that everyone understands then, DOT mandates the requirements, the developer pays and installs the changes. At some point, DOT inspects and accepts, or not accepts, I guess.
Correct.
And then when they eventually accept, then it's theirs to maintain.
Correct.
Is there a way to make that explicit in the language? Because it seems a little fuzzy to me.
In our UDO language or the minute language?
Probably both.
Working on the UDO language to probably make that more explicit as we go through that. We'll comb through those requirements for subdivision submittals and stuff like that. That DOT, in particular TIA, if it triggers, will be one of those things we discuss as we move forward with the audit and rewrite process.
Okay.
The other part of this
Go ahead.
is that wanted to make sure that everybody was aware is the second part of Mr. Larkin's comments. Also in the sixth paragraph on the same page, I believe the wording deceleration lane might be incorrect. The words DOT dedicated right away should be substituted.
I believe that's correct.
Katie has gone back and double checked the correct wording. She's going to change it. And also she needs to add Dustin Graham's name in it. So those corrections will be done as well.
Okay.
Okay, that's good. And just from my clarification, in the way this process works, the developer pays for it. The developer hires the contractors to do it
Correct.
under the supervision or guidance of NCDOT,
Yeah. So
who must then ultimately approve it.
Mhm.
Okay.
So technically, either, I don't know how exactly the process works, but either DOT will provide kind of a blueprint for the developer to implement, or I think this is really how it works, is that the developer will provide a blueprint to DOT based on what they want to implement, and DOT ultimately approves everything.
So I
From
guess my
that on.
concern is could there be a significant variance between the way a deacceleration lane is built by one developer and the way it's built by another developer?
And I think that's where we're going to get into the blanket of you'll hear NCDOT standards be used a lot. It is all up to their standard. It is their road.
Okay.
Such the situation we dealt with the Dollar General a few months ago with the deceleration lane in front of the Century 21 where we had that discussion. It's DOT's road. I mean, it becomes kind of the scenario of their world. We're just living in it, unfortunately, because it is their road. It's not the town's road. We can have conversations, but when it comes to repairing those roads or anything, DOT can contract out with the towns and pay them to do it. I've seen that done in a few instances, but it is DOT's road to maintain.
So we don't really have much leverage in terms of.
When it comes to DOT roads, no.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, even the right-of-ways, they want to control the right-of-ways, and it gets to the point where they contract out with the towns to, hey, will you maintain this for us? So.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Barring any other changes, those changes will be incorporated in these minutes, Dustin's name and the changing of the correct designation of the part of the road in question in front of that development. Barring any changes, any motion to approve the minutes as modified?
I go so approve.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? Okay, that brings us to item 5, to the sign regulation update. That I guess we have some new language from papers right there from Chad and the staff group. I guess we'll go down the line, but I'll kick it off with some of my comments because they're kind of follow a little bit what Pete also said. And the main topic here we've been talking about is these monument signs for developments. The public has brought up an interesting comment on what is a development, so we might want to talk about that for a second. This new latest revision does clarify the item of face area, which is where the text and the graphics goes. But I concur with Pete's comments and also the public's comments on height is one issue. Because I looked at our commercial side, section 11.9.1, and on those monument signs, we say the maximum height allowed is 16 feet and the maximum allowed total signage area is 64 feet. So the 64 feet seems to be concurrent to what we're talking here, but I believe, in my opinion, I suggest that we also incorporate the same 16-foot height limitations. I drove around the town to look at monument signs the other day, and two things came, I guess, in my mind. I think the height's important that one, if we impose the height limitation on the commercial side, I view these signs as commercial signs almost. They're really kind of selling the developer. So I think we should be consistent and impose the same height limitation. But then we get into the definition side, because what is the height definition? I noticed a number of these signs sit on mounds, either on the side of the entrances or a mound in the median in between two lanes. So I think we would need to also include some language talking about how you define that height. To me, it's the height from the finished grade around the sign, not from like the mound they build the sign on. And I guess my opinion, just looking at stuff out in the town, and I'll turn it over to other folks, is I'm not overly concerned how big or how wide the sign is. That's, if they want to use up all their sellable land for their sign, to me, the height is the main criteria. Now that we've specified the text area, if we specify a height, and I could be sold on a number maybe less than 16 feet, but that's a separate discussion. That I'm really not overly concerned if they make it 20 feet wide or they have different step levels. That seems to be too much. And I guess my only other second comment was I could also be sold on the additional signs we're talking about maybe being somewhat smaller than the 2 entrance signs, but we can address that separately. I'll go down.
Well, I mean,
I'll go down the line from left to right, and we'll have some comments.
Yeah, I think to some extent, I mean, like I just did a quick survey before I got here, and you look at the entrance signs, for instance, of Sea Trail. And I mean, I didn't get out there with a measuring stick. But
Pete did. You want the dimensions?
Yeah. God bless him.
Let me see. He's got it here somewhere.
Now, these are the new brick encased signs that they've done.
Something he sent me had them. Oh, here they are. It's 10 feet tall in the center. Well, 6.5 foot tall at the ends, 10 feet tall in the center, 18-foot long make section. The actual lettering portion is 5 foot high by 11 feet wide.
That's, I mean, I guess
that's what he.
Yeah, the measurement from end to end. That, did he measure that? Because that doesn't seem right. I mean,
no, he said no. That's the height. He didn't give the length, did he? No. 6.5 foot tall at the ends, the lower portion,
right.
And then they pyramid up. 10 foot tall in the center. He's saying that the long section is 18 feet long, so 18 by 10. He didn't measure. It looked like the pyramid.
The flanks.
The flanks, right.
Right.
But the thing is, they're already grandfathered.
Oh,
Yeah, their grandfather.
So it doesn't matter.
Well, my concern is that now we're going to be having new developments that are going to look at that sign and go, why can't I build a sign like that?
That's why.
And that's why.
Good variance.
And but you're right. I mean, a lot of these signs end up being on burls that they've already pre-built. And do we want to suggest? Because I think what we want to avoid is signs towering above, so that really the height ought to be done from grade. And if you want to use some of that measurement to put it up in the air a little bit, knock yourself out, but that means you're going to lose signage height.
Right.
So
that's the developer's choice then.
And that's the developer's choice. The second issue I have is in terms of this concern about mixed-use development. In Sea Trail, there's been a sign at the north entrance in the middle lane in the promoting a restaurant that doesn't exist anymore, Magnolia. That sign's been there forever. When it was originally done, it was consistent with the look and feel of the monument signs. As we explore how we manage mixed-use development, I think that's an appropriate sign if it's consistent with the ambience of the monument sign. And, excuse me, sorry, shut up. But would allow, for instance, and I've used this example a lot, house restaurant in the VAC, and any future plans that for commercial development within these, you want to be able to allow that commercial entity to have a sign at the gateway that says, "Hey, I'm in here." Now, how do you do that? Ironically, I think the model in that north sign for Sea Trail, where they had 2 large monument signs and then a smaller sign, consistent in look and feel of the monument signs that simply identified Magnolia Restaurant, open to the public, or whatever they want to do. Now, how we embed that in these regulations is the challenge.
Gerald?
Yeah. Just one to your point. I think 16 feet in the air is way too high. I think it takes away from Sunset Beach itself. It takes away from what we all drive to keep it a nice place to visit. And the last thing I would like to see is these signs 16 feet. So I think 16 feet is way too high. We can agree on 8 to 10 maybe, or 6 is really what I'm most comfortable with is 6 feet. Because if you go to any upscale towns or communities where they preserve the integrity of the town, you'll see these small monument signs. So I'm totally against anything over 6 feet. Make that plain.
What do we, sorry, do we know? I mean, one good example that we might look at is the signs at Ocean Ridge, which they've just erected, and those are fairly low. I mean, I doubt if they're more than 8 feet.
The other point that I had is on House's Place. So on the rewrite, he's allowed to have 6 feet by whatever the dimension was, by 14 feet in a monument sign. Is that correct? Am I reading that correctly? And then this is with House's Place doing a non-residential use. His monument sign can be what we're describing, 6 feet by 14 feet, or
Yes.
whatever it is. Yes.
Right now, we defined it as
Yeah. Well,
the additional facility can have additional monument signs
yes.
of the same size of the other one,
Correct.
which
Would he
we either
not
have to break out a separate,
would he not have to get approval from Sea Trail first prior to
well, the HOA is separate.
the?
Yeah, the HOA is separate, and I have no doubt that
Yeah.
Riptide controls the HOA, so they're going to be pushing for that kind of.
Okay. If that's the case, then there is no provision in there because it can be illuminated, but within a residential area, that light cannot stay on all night. So there's got to be a time frame someplace in that's
I mean, I think
the
the rules.
verbiage.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
in that verbiage, just a time frame in that verbiage.
Yeah, I mean, I think the rules have to change in terms of what that sign can be, and I'm not sure we're addressing, can that sign be placed within the area, the general area of the entrance monument signs?
Why don't we get Sybil into it before we get
I'm having
town
a little trouble
staff to comment
following.
then?
I'm getting a little lost here because I'm not keeping up with exactly what y'all are referring to because number one was, where did you get a 16-foot sign?
It's height is the
Height
16
Height.
foot.
16 feet.
On
Where
the
do you get
commercial.
that?
It's in the commercial section. That's what we allow on commercial signs right now on a monument side. And I'll repeat, section 11.9.1 on page 11-10 at the bottom there. Paragraph A1, maximum height allowed is 16 feet.
Do I not have this information?
It's in
the book.
It's in the book.
Oh, well, I thought we were
Sybil.
working on this.
Sybil, he is referring to.
Well, what I'm saying is we're working on monument signs for entrances to developments, but we already have criteria for commercial people that limits the height, but we're currently not putting anything in for height on this one. So what either should be the same.
Well, it does say.
No, that's the text area, not the height of the monument.
And it's 6 feet in height.
Of
Residential.
the face area. That's where the text is, which means the monument could be 100 feet high with a 6-foot sign on it.
Okay, I have to admit,
It's the structure
6
versus
feet in height to me is
is the sign, the lettering.
the lettering.
But
Okay,
the structure, if you look at this, I guess
but it's still it's covered by the area that it can cover. So,
So you're-
you're saying they're going to put it up on piling? Oh, they could. I know they won't, but you're saying that the way it's written now, they could put them up on piling 16 feet in the air.
yes, or they could make the whole wall 20 feet high that they put their sign on. Commercial, they can. It's limited to 16 feet off the ground. But the way we're written now, they could build the wall that they attach the sign to, the structure,
Okay.
any height they want, as long as their sign area fits our criteria.
Okay.
We're not, there's two things where I guess it's kind of confusing, yeah. There's the structure, the monument itself,
Uh-huh.
the brick and the mortar, and the lights and all that stuff. And then there's the actual
Text
text
or
or
whatever.
sign that
Yeah.
they're putting on that wall.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, at a minimum, we should apply the same height requirement to the structure that we apply on commercial.
Okay.
Now,
All
whether
right, I'm following
Gerald's
now.
saying he
Thank you.
wants to limit that further, and I'm kind of okay with that. I'm kind of more in the 12-foot range, but uh, but that's the difference. You got to think about. There's two things. They're building a wall to hang a sign on, right? So
Basically,
there's the issue of the wall, and then the issue of the sign on the wall, and then how many and where, right?
Okay.
So yeah, it does get mind-boggling almost.
Yeah, but I think we either have to look at residential and deal with residential, worry about commercial later. I
Well, I'm not
mean, we got to do
mixing-
them one at a time. When you start cross-referencing them, I don't think that's exactly
Right.
helpful because commercial's commercial, residential's residential.
Yeah, but I'd say those monument signs are commercial. They're advertising their development. I mean, there's no difference.
Okay.
When
Well,
all the houses are sold, yeah, but they're essentially commercial signs.
okay. All
Why do you
right.
think they want to put them up?
Just
I
for
guess.
instance, I'm looking at the sign at the entrance of my neighborhood. That's residential. I don't see how commercial would any way be involved with it.
Well, maybe we need to make a distinction between a development that is purely residential as opposed to a development that within it has, Sea Trail has significant commercial enterprises within it. They've got golf courses, they've got restaurants, whereas other
But
developments.
still, they're in a residential area, so they should be governed by residential rules, whether they're a commercial entity in it or not. I don't see where all of a sudden you can change it, but, oh, well, I'm a restaurant, so I can build one 10 feet high if I want to. No, you're in a residential area, you follow residential rules.
Right, and I don't disagree with that. We're trying to create a way for that commercial development within a residence to have signage
At the entrance,
at the entrance.
no.
Okay.
I mean,
think-
that's my opinion.
Okay, I think it's time we hear from town staff since they're looking glum down there at the end.
So I wrote this addressing the last comments on a lot of different things. I think you have to caution yourself when you're looking to put 16-foot signs in residential zoning districts. These are residential zoning districts intended to stay residential zoning districts. That's why I've gone cautionally even to allow one monument sign to be permitted per lot, parcel, or facility. I think you have to caution yourself. I'm kind of reaching there on good planning practice. The biggest thing is you want to keep these. I think 6 feet is a good number. The reason why you don't want a 16-foot sign in a residential zoning district, you just don't. You don't see it. You might see them as the entrance signs, but you would not see them as a monument sign. When you go look at monument signs, the small ones on the ground, most of them don't get off more than 5 to 6 feet in height, and you want to keep that kind of harmonious intention there. I don't know how we could address I know, it's kind of one of those things where you've got magnolia in the back and the house and all those things, but, within a subdivision, and giving them the ability to advertise. And that's why, I put such signs down there. When you only allow for a monument sign to be permitted per lot, parcel, or facility, I wrote there in a caveat of C1I, signs may contain signage in the face area for all establishments within the multi-tenant use or overall facility. So you got the tennis court, the volleyball court, and the swimming pool. They all don't get 64 square feet on the sign. They get signage within that allowable 64 square feet of sign face area. I also added that the permitted monument signs may be illuminated and external that stayed And then the signs, I made sure the signs would also need to meet the landscaping provisions referenced in section 11.a or section 11.8a1. The other thing is I've texted Carrie White. I don't remember off the top of my head. I can put in there not to exceed 64 square feet, 14 feet in height, and 14 feet in length and 6 feet in height. I think the way we measure a house from top to bottom on height is from lowest adjacent grade. If you want me to add the language in there, not to exceed the length of or the height of 6 feet from lowest adjacent grade, I could add that in there. I also defined a sign face area. And then sign monument, I took out the language which measures at least 2/3 of the horizontal length of the sign, and made it a freestanding sign with a base affixed to the ground that is independent from the building structure. And then I defined use. I also got this language from surrounding municipalities in the Brunswick County area. That also worked. The same person who was working on our UDO also worked on theirs. So I kind of hopefully made it harmonious to language that we would potentially be seeing in the future. And then the signs exempt from permitting requirements with directional signs. I had a conversation with Pete. Pete met and I for about an hour, worked on this, and I met with Chad on February 23rd to discuss the draft wording for Section 11 sign regulations text amendment. We are all understanding that this is a complex topic, especially in the light of the development expansion we're seeing. Added to our conversation that the amount of non-conforming situations that the text amendment could create. While I generally agree that reworded draft does better establish that the 6-foot height times 14 feet width max dimensions for sign face area containing words, numbers, and pictures, I remain uncomfortable that the overall monument sign has not been clearly addressed. Chad and I interpret the wording differently. In that, the town is the author of the document. I believe that the developer is entitled to make an interpretation that is not what we might desire. One of the problems here is that the present UDO articles 11.3 and 11.8 are currently poorly written, and that we are trying to insert wording to allow for reasonable changes. I believe we should start fresh as to rewrite these articles from scratch and not trying to edit existing content. Hope you have a productive meeting. Sorry I can't attend. And that's kind of where I'm at with that. I have spoke with developers, especially on the directional signs. This wording was the intent of Bill Clark to help them with their amenity. I reworked it to allow for, with Riptide in mind, or not Riptide in mind, Sea Trail in mind, they have the most, in fact, I think the only, besides what's going to be the one entity that's going to be built in sanctuary, is that they have the most non-residential uses in one zoning district. I can't really think of anywhere else in the town that has this. So allowing them to use the directional signs, which I've talked to staff of Sea Trail to help with that direction around as they try to revamp that, and also allowing them to enhance these non-residential amenities in the neighborhood, to allow them to give one side not to exceed 64 square feet in face area, 14 feet in length, and 6 feet in height. And that's kind of where I'm at with it. I don't know. I mean, we could add on there to such signs may contain signage in the face area for all established within the subdivision. If you want to do that, I can definitely add that language in there as well. Again, I just want to make sure we're keeping in the mind that this is a residential zoning district. You don't want 16-foot signs in there. I've toyed with 5 and 6, and 6 I went with 6 instead of the 5, which was the original language that Bill Clark I sent to them and approved, and then that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Well, I don't think we disagree with the face area.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all concur on the monument. There's two things. First of all, let's go to section 11.8. A. Those are the two monument signs at the entrance.
Correct.
To whether the public comment is right on what a subdivision or not, we can discuss that also. But in our mind, we have a view of what the subdivision is on size, which is a multi-parcel, multi-structure grouping of houses and stuff. Okay. Now, whether that we got it defined right, it's a whole separate issue. But I think from previous meeting, we concurred that the 64 feet on those two monument signs are correct, or okay.
Okay.
And we agree in the 64 feet, in my mind, you need a does not exceed after those commas, but we can argue about how the correct English is. But it does not exceed 64 feet, does not exceed 14 feet in length, and does not exceed 6 feet in height. That is the sign, the graphic area, and we've agreed that that is correct. I think the point that maybe I didn't explain right is I think we need to add another item here that limits the size of the structure of the monument to a number above the finished grade around the sign. Now, whether it's I only brought 16 feet up because I viewed it that we already had that limit on commercial folks. We can choose a higher number or we can choose a lower number, but right now we have no number. Right now, if Riptide or Bill Clark wants to build a monument that's 40 feet high and put a 64 feet sign on it, they can.
You talking about
The structure itself.
Are we talking about the entrance?
Yes,
Or are we talking
we're talking about the two entrance signs at the moment.
Okay.
Right? Now, unless I read it completely wrong, that as long as they have a 64 square text area, they can build the monument as high as they want. Not that they would, but where in this section limits the height of those monuments at the entrance, or any dimension of the monument, not the graphics.
That would be the 14 feet in length and 6 feet in height.
That's the face area.
No, this face area would be 64. If you take 64 square feet, and then I think it's 84 would be 14 by 6.
84 square feet.
Yeah.
Well, have we modified this section? Right. So it's not what it says now.
So 14 by 6, the 11.8A, as far as entrance size, that text has not changed. That has been the text the whole entire time. I think we have to take the signs that we vision around Citro right now out of our minds because they're grandfathered and they were built in the 90s.
Well, so we're saying, or you're saying now, and then maybe I've been wrong, that this paragraph A describes the size of the monument.
Yes.
And now
14
we've
feet by
written new
6.
sections in C-1
Yes.
that's describing the face area
Yeah.
using the same figures.
And I can go back and add the face area in there for the 64 square feet on the entrance signs, but I separated it out for non-residential uses in residential zoning districts under section 11.8 residential zoning district sign regulations.
But and I got to go back in the notes. How big wasn't the original Bill Clark sign? Was it more than 64 feet in total area? Because it was long and low, wasn't it?
Yeah, like 40 feet by 8 or something.
That was the picture that might have been circled around. That was never the actual
I got it.
language that was provided in. If they were okay with the 64 square feet of face area,
Yeah.
14 feet in length
were.
and 6 feet in height.
Well, you keep mixing up face area with the monument. We got to separate the two in our minds. There's the sign, the face area, and the monument. Do we not care about the monument? That's fine. If that's what we agree on, I'm okay with it.
No,
And move on.
we have to.
Yeah, no, we need to provide guidance in terms of how big the actual structure can be,
Yeah.
and then
that's
how much of,
Height,
And
the 14 by
the
6.
overall height.
14 by 6.
right.
Is the monument in this section, but in the other section, it's the face area, which means in the other signs, you got bigger monuments. Because the monument has to be bigger than the face area to hold up the face. You see where I'm going? If section 11.8.a allows a monument to be no more than 14 feet in length and 6 feet in height, and then on paragraph C, we're saying your face area can be 14 by 6, well, it's monument. So all the extra signs are bigger monuments. to allow the same face area.
Okay, graphics.
I know. I think that, well, to me, the two languages should be the same if we're allowing the same signs. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
On which sign?
So-
Entrance signs or inside facility signs?
So
Right.
I see where you're getting confused. I see this now. You have to separate the two. Both of them are considered monument signs by the definition that I have provided,
Right.
which is a freestanding sign with a fixed base to the ground that is independent from any building or structure.
Correct.
So technically,
Fixed base.
both of them meet the definition of a monument sign.
Correct.
All right, so we agree on that. We look at entrance signs.
Yes.
Entrance signs by themselves,
Yes.
or entrance to subdivision signs. All right, you have the big ones that Sea Trail did back in the 90s. Yeah. So that are now non-conforming. The reason why they were able to reface them is because they were there, they were non-conforming. They did not expand the non-conformity. If they expanded the non-conformity, they wouldn't be allowed to do that. But they kept and actually shrunk the Sea Trail signage area. All right, so if we wanted to look at entrance signs and expand the height or the width on that, I think that would be reasonable. However, we're still looking at residential entities, so we need to be cautious. Now, when you get into the monument signs for establishments and non-residential uses, lots, or facilities, that's where this comes into play. And you have 6 feet height, 14 feet in width, and then this would be your square area of 60, face area of 64 square feet. Now, what I need to do is go back to section 11.8A. And that would be up to 2 ground monumented signs per subdivision entrance may be utilized provided that the sign does not exceed in 64 square feet, add face area, 14 feet in height, 14 feet in length, 6 feet in height. And then I need to actually strike through because I don't think I can do this anymore. Must be neatly constructed
Yeah.
of plastic masonry treated wood. So that's
Well,
what I would need to do.
There
Now,
should be no difference between this and paragraph C, other than that you allow one per, that it should be exactly the same language except for the one per that first sentence.
Correct, and that's why I separated it out.
Right.
'Cause
And I think what we're saying is we still want to, maybe you're telling me we have it, and I just don't see it.
Okay,
A height limitation on the structure.
we do,
Where?
6 feet.
That's the monument itself.
Okay,
That's the monument, 6 feet. What you just drew. How far off the ground can that go? Is my question. That sign, how far? And to his point, how far can it go physically off the ground?
none. It would have to be affixed
So it's
to
a
the
ground. It's
Yeah,
a
and
ground
that's where the-
mounted.
Sorry, and that's where the sign monument sign comes in. It is a freestanding sign with a base affixed to the ground that is independent from any building or structure. So it has to be on the ground.
Well, yeah, but ground, I mean,
And we can add
Yes.
6 feet from lowest adjacent grade if we want to get that technical with it. But when I look at a submittal for a sign, most of the time it looks something like this, and I make sure the height of the sign does not, from the ground all the way up, does not exceed.
well, a lot of them, because of the landscaping requirements, will actually slope the landscaping into the sign, and the sign is lifted on that, which is lovely. I mean,
and
I
it
don't
creates a grade change, which is fine. I mean,
Right.
as long as they're not bringing in more than 4 inches of grade change, they don't have their, keeps them under that whole stormwater thing. But if we want to add in there, affixed to the ground from lowest adjacent grade, I can have that.
Yeah, I think that
I agree with
Well, I
that.
think we need to, well, with all due respect, Chad, I think what we have written here is still not right. But
yeah. Well, can I make a?
I
Go ahead.
because we mix between the entrance signs and the extra signs. I'm just going to call them extra signs, internal signs. I don't think we have the constraint written properly, but so be it.
Well, I mean, should we perhaps table this and say on the next UDO meeting, we skip from Article 3 and go
To 11.
to 11 and just, because I think we have whittled this down and improved it, but I kind of agree with Pete that, trying to do this in parts.
I want to add into this. I want to eventually. We've got to move this to council. Bill Clark applied for this back in December, and the only reason there was a reason why we moved it to kind of a staff initiated one because of us tabling it. It should have gone as a motion of approval or denial at the January meeting. I've never been one to pressure y'all into it. I don't think we need to wait for the 2 years to fix this into the UDO rewrite. This needs to be sent to council at some point.
Well, what is the Bill Clark sign? I'm trying to pull
Bill
my-
Clark sign is they have not submitted anything officially. They have asked for the text amendment to allow them, because right now they're not allowed a sign for their amenity. The only way Sea Trail is getting around it is because they have existing monument signs, such at the Pink Palace, the MAC, and a little one at the golf course. So they're able to reface those, not to exceed those there. Even at the clubhouse, even their sales office had a sign there. And the only reason they were allowed to reface it is because there was an existing sign there.
Well, they built an entirely new sign in front of their office space.
So
according to this.
Well, so maybe is the email to you, Chad, from Jim Sorello of Paramount Engineering from Wednesday, December 8th, 2021, where they say Bill Clark wants to do a sign wall that is 45 foot long, 52 inches high, which is 4 feet 8 inches, with a text area of 60 square feet. 2 subdivision logos, which are on each 10 square foot, each 30 inches square. That don't make a lot of sense. So they're proposing a monument, a structure that's 45 feet long by 4 feet, 4 inches high. I don't know. Someone's got to do the math. How many square feet is the monument? And they're going to put a
160.
text area. How much?
What, it was 45 feet? So you're talking
45.
180 square feet.
So they got a 180 square foot monument, wall, structure, whatever you want, and they're going to put a text area on it that's 60 square feet. So are they in compliance with 11.8A or not?
So that was an email when I was working with Jim on the text language. I wrote it to give them a sign, and also wrote it in mind of what would be approved, what I think the planning board and council would be comfortable with. Or how long was the sign?
45 feet.
45 feet, and how much in height?
For 52 inches, 4 feet 8. So
So
4 feet 4.
4 feet. We look at 6 feet. Comfortable. If that's, when I had that conversation with them, the 45 feet in length, I don't think would be comfortable for anybody.
No.
And that's the way I wrote it. So when I sent them back the text language that I had looked at, and it's like, hey, this is what I've come up with to take to the planning board. Does this meet the intent of what you want? And Mr. Cirillo came back and said, this will be great. And we rolled with it. So that's the original one was, I've seen the picture of the sign. It was 45 feet in length, 4 feet in height. But when they came back with it, with the harmony of trying to get it approved, and not be, I guess kind of shot down, I talked to them about that and moved with language that I thought the council and the planning board would be comfortable with, making an amendment to the existing text. That's where the 64 square feet of face area came up with 14 feet in length and 6 feet in height. Um, so the proposed changes, and hopefully we can get to the point where we're making a recommendation, would be on section 11.8A, adding the 64 square feet in face area, then striking, they must be neatly constructed of plastic masonry treated wood. Now, if we wanted to increase that entrance sign from 6 to whatever, I'm comfortable. I think we would be comfortable with that. And then move on to C. We also need to add in there measuring the height on A and C from lowest adjacent grade. Signs may contain signage within the face area for all establishments. There's lighting language in there. The non-directional sign changes are in there. And then the definitions of sign face area, sign monument, and then a defined use.
Could I make one suggestion?
Sure.
And maybe it's just me that looks at it this way, but I think if the sign area and the sign were two different sentences, when you go from one into the other, I think it's confusing. So if it were just two different sentences, same thing, but two different sentences, I think it would be a lot more understandable. Because I was totally confused on it. I mean, that doesn't mean anything, but it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I think she makes a valid point. They're trying to make a delineation that we're saying that
Yeah,
the sign face area is 64 feet, but the sign
Sign
itself
itself.
can't be any bigger than 14 feet
Yeah.
in length by 6 feet in height off the
that's
grade.
all. I mean, it's just saying the
So
same
we
thing.
might
just-
need, instead of some commas, some periods and a separate sentence.
Mhm.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I think she
can
makes a valid point to separate out what's the sign, the billboard, so to speak,
Yeah.
and what's the thing it's hung on.
Or, call part of it the graphic area and part of it the total area.
And are we comfortable with 14 by 8 as the monument size?
14 by 6.
6
On the entrance.
on the entrance sign. Sorry.
I have no problem with that.
Neither do I.
Yeah.
My overall is the height, the total height of the.
Yeah.
I guess, well,
And I don't blame you.
I might cut them a little more slack. in
yeah, I'm
terms
thinking a
of
little
width.
more slack. Well, I don't know. It's just that, well, if we add the part about finished grade, we're actually lowering the sign a bit. Because, well, at least what I seen when I drove around, especially the ones that were in between the two lanes are in mounds. I
It's
mean,
just like-
some of the mounds, most of them look to be about 2 foot above the curbs.
Yeah.
So that road to the
Yeah,
mound
I
to
mean,
the floor.
But you're also
Yeah,
allowing.
I just wondered, is the
you're
6
gonna
feet enough when if we define it that way? Is reasonable or not?
I think it's reasonable.
Okay.
On the entrance signs, I think I would, you could go a little bit taller. I don't know, 16 feet might be a little high, but it's what y'all are comfortable with when it comes to that. The one I would get uncomfortable with is allowing 16 feet in the residential areas. I mean, you just got to think about you living next to a non-residential unit and you have a 16-foot high sign.
What do we
Where-
allow for a fence? Don't we allow an 8-foot fence?
6
So-
foot, unless
6
you're
foot?
on the waterway golf course or beach. Unless you're on the water
I
beach,
thought subdivision fence was allowed a little more, but
they're allowed up to 6 feet unless you're on the golf course or water view or a street. You can't impede sight lines.
So have we whittled this down to something that we can? I mean, it sounds to me like we've decided that we're not going to. We're going to try and approve this language so we can facilitate Bill Clark,
Which was the intent of this.
which
Yes, sir.
makes me a little nervous, but as opposed to tackling the signage Article 11 whole
And I want to
in the next UDO meeting.
and maybe the nervousness might be calmed down. Initially, they had paid for it. This was initially a citizen-initiated text amendment with payment, so they had initially paid for this to go forward to y'all. So because of that, they had say so in what goes into this language.
Well, I mean, I understand if they started talking about this in December and they're
Right.
waiting for an answer in March.
Correct.
I
Yeah.
don't think that's great either. So, but it does put us in the position of
And
going
again,
ahead and whittling this down, because I mean, I think it's generally improved. You know, I'm still concerned about this mixed use development issue that I think is probably going to have to be addressed in the UDO as opposed to this.
yes. Again, Mr. Larkin and I've had, this is a just poorly written overall sign section article anyway.
Yeah.
Period. End of story.
Yeah.
And, for lack of a better word, you're kind of polishing a turd here.
Well,
So,
I guess the question I have is, if we approve what we've whittled this down to, is this something that we can, without embarrassment, drop into the UDO as the improvement to 11.3 and 11.8? Or are we going to have to revise the revisions when we get to the UDO?
Can we make these final revisions and vote on them in the meeting in 2 weeks? Add that to that agenda?
if you want me to, or if you're comfortable with,
As opposed to waiting all the way for a month. I don't think we're at the point to vote on this now without seeing what the final text is.
I mean,
I
I can
agree.
tell you what the final text is going to be. If you want me, we've done that before. I can tell you what the final text is going to be. I can read it to you. Section 11.8A, up to 2 ground monumented signs per subdivision entrance may be utilized provided that each sign does not exceed 64 square feet in face area. The sign, I would have to come up with a language that the sign itself may not exceed 14 feet in length and 6 feet in height from lowest adjacent grade. We will strike through. They must be neatly constructed of plastic masonry treated and sandblasted wood, excluding wood and lattice sheets, and must be colored in earth tone shades. If you go to section C, non-residential uses in residential zoning districts, 1 monument sign may be permitted per lot, parcel, or facility, provided that each sign face area does not exceed 64 square feet. The sign itself may not exceed 14 feet in length, 6 feet in height. Sign would also need to meet the landscaping provisions referenced in section 11.8A1. Such signs may contain signage in the face area for all establishments within a multi-tenant use or overall facility. The sign exempt from permitting regulations will stay the same as written here. And then adoption of definitions, the sign face area, sign monument, and then use.
So essentially, C is addressing the signs within the residential development.
Yes.
So, and again, I think we're going to have some debate on how we manage signage at the entrance that would allow commercial developments to make people aware that they exist.
Yeah. And to go back, I have written this in the best way I feel like that can stick and make sense and does not create more confusion with the language we have today.
Right.
And potentially stick when we rewrite this that it is already better than what is there.
Right.
I do think there's going to be some revisions of this, especially when you look at potentially using signs overall for residential uses and then signs overall for non-residential uses, instead of getting into this whole signs and non-residential uses and signs in residential zoning districts and then signs in non-residential zoning districts. I like the other way better than the way it's written now. It makes it less confusing, cleaner, and easier to interpret it and use.
But we need this done now.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
I move that we accept it as the way Chad has just read it to us.
And then, Mr. Chairman, there is a consistency statement that is in your packet as well. And again, it has to be, and it will be twice, to set the public hearing and at the public hearing addressed with town council.
Okay.
For final approval.
Before we proceed on the motion, I just want to be clear that this would not exclude us going back in the UDO and addressing the commercial signage at entrance
No.
Okay.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right.
You know,
I'm going to defer to my colleagues in terms of a second.
Personally, I'm okay with the Bill Clark, what he needs to be done, but I kind of agree with Pete and Pete's comments that we need to take a hard look at some of these other areas.
Mhm.
So for Bill Clark, I don't have a problem. As long as the sign stays, the
But that we
dimension
can't-
stays, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
But to your point, yes, we reserve the right to
Yeah.
change further on.
Okay.
On the second one, again, I think we need to work on that a little more.
So are we going to approve it as shared by Chad today, or are
Well, I'll put it up for a vote and we can vote on it.
well, we don't even have a second yet, do we?
Yeah, you have a motion.
You just have a
Are
motion.
are we voting on both provisions right now?
Madam Clerk,
We're
you
just
do
on the
have
Bill
a-
Clark one.
No,
Okay, so there, okay, you have a second? There was a second.
I didn't second.
Yeah, you have a motion, right?
I deferred to my colleagues here for a second. And to
I made a motion.
Ron's point, are we doing these one section at a time or everything?
I will do everything.
everything.
And
Okay.
that's-
On both provisions, on
Yes.
non-residential and
And yes,
residential.
it's just that one
It's
section.
just that
Okay.
whole section, yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Gentlemen?
So, do I need a second to read the action?
Mhm.
I need a second to read the action.
Yeah, you have a motion. Need a second.
Well, deep subject. Absent a second, how do we proceed? Are we,
You can make a recommendation for denial.
okay. So I make a recommend, well, how do we offer an alternative? I'm assuming the alternative is that we want to see this written in text
Yeah.
and addressed, because I think this is actually could potentially be lifted into the UDO, and that would be something that we do at the next meeting. So we could kill two birds with one stone, approve the new language for Bill Clark, and tackle.
Yes, when
The-
we get to the UDO. They're two entirely separate things, and the UDO will be gone over and over.
Oh God, I
So
know.
we will have lots of time to go out and measure and figure out what we want, what is the best. But right now, this builder needs an answer.
Yeah, that's,
And he can't wait till we do that, because as they said, you know,
Well, I'm
doing
su-
the-
Well,
I'm suggesting that we can take Article 11 and
well,
make a motion that says next UDO meeting we're going to tackle Article 11,
good.
and at the end of that meeting we will either approve or not approve the Bill Clark
Well, it doesn't,
amendments.
even if we do that, that is not law.
Right.
The council votes on it 2 years.
Right.
So, we have law now that is the present UDO as
Right.
written. If we make no changes, any developer or anyone doing development in Sunset Beach has to follow the UDO as written.
Right.
We can leave it as is. We have no obligation to do anything. We just have an obligation to
Hold
be
on.
sensible.
So the other thing
But-
is that
But if we want to alter the existing law through a text amendment, this is what we're considering today, is either a vote, or we could take an action to move ahead with the text amendment as Chad has orally described.
Mhm.
We can take the text amendment that Chad has already described and deny it, or we can recommend, take an action that says we need to see the text amendment thoroughly written for the next planning board meeting to consider.
and I don't know, I have to defer to Lisa. If they table this, will it have to come back in April, or can it be on the agenda for the March 17th meeting?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
It really depends on why you're tabling it. Are you tabling it for additional legwork to it, or are you tabling it because Pete's not here?
They want to table it for the they want to table it because I verbally read it to the way they want it written. But I think they're more comfortable seeing it in writing to go to council versus me verbally
Reading it.
reading it.
And you can do that. You can move it to the next, the earliest meeting if they just want to see it back in writing, or you can approve it as amended.
I
Now,
think that it
We have a
has nothing to do
motion
with
to
PD.
approve it as amended. They just still have, they have issues with it that
We
are
had a
going to,
motion and not a second.
You don't have
Correct. So the motion would die
without a second.
without a second. But can they bring this back on to the March 17th?
They can. But
So-
with everything going out on YouTube, Chad can listen verbatim to what was said and what was agreed upon by you all. You have to have a level of trust in your staff that they'll do what the board wanted done.
Well, I don't think that's the issue. It's the issue is it seems to be more complicated than it appeared on the surface. And it seems like the wording and the interpretation of the wording is somewhat critical in our minds and what's going to actually occur in real life at some point. And you weren't here earlier, so there was quite a bit of confusion on what we're allowing or not allowing. So I think there's just some reservations of making sure we can see what we're proposing to send to council, think it through in our minds that yes, this is what we want to move through.
I understand.
I sense that we're really not comfortable moving it through at this point
Yeah.
until we actually read it again, look at the book, think about it, and then say, okay, now we're comfortable to move ahead. I mean, I guess we could throw it to council and let them hash it out, but
Well, I would
that
encourage
doesn't seem to
you.
be the wise thing to do.
I would encourage you to get it approved as fast as you can, because when it goes to council and they are ready to move it to public hearing and then it's voted on, so it's at least 30 days, maybe depending on timing, it could be up to 60 days before it actually takes law. And we've got a lot of developments that are coming online quick. So just keep
So
that
there's
in your
two
mind.
sides of the coins there.
That's right.
Because we got a lot of development, we'd like to get this as right as we can
I understand.
without causing a bigger mess later. We know we have the one issue with one citizen requesting a change, but so I guess what I hear, and I don't know if I need another motion or I can make a motion, is that we table this until the March 17th meeting to get final text written with the strikeouts in red, the whole section. Chad, would that be all of 11.8, I guess, right? Or am I wrong on that?
It'll be
Yeah,
11.8A,
9 or whatever.
11.8C,
Right.
11.3, and then Appendix D.
So procedurally, you've got a motion on the floor that doesn't have a second.
Correct.
So you need to call for a second. And if you don't get a second to it, then that motion automatically fails. And then you would call for a motion to table.
Okay. We have a second on the first motion to proceed. I hear no seconds, so the motion is denied. Do we have a motion to table for final text for the next available meeting, which I believe is 2 weeks from today, March 17th? Anyone like to make that motion?
I so move.
Second. All in favor?
Any discussion, or I think we're pretty agreed on this.
All in favor of moving to final text at the next meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No objections?
nay,
You have an objection?
I nay. Yes, I don't vote for it.
Okay, so we have 3 in favor and 1 against. The motion carries.
And I'd just like to acknowledge that Chad is doing yeoman's work here in terms of trying to get this done, and we should all be very appreciative of
I agree.
what he has contributed to this.
It's just amazing how something that seems sort of simple turns into a quite complicated and confusing.
Yeah.
Well, I
Topic.
disagree. I disagree. I disagree. I think things are being overthought and overpicked to pieces, whereas we have such a huge body of work to do. We need to do it more efficiently.
Okay. So that's going to be on 317 for the final wrap. Number 6, no new business. Number 7, any additional public comments? Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to share, just in the spirit of transparency, as a property owner within Sea Trails, I attended a owners meeting that was sponsored by Riptide. At that meeting, I was approached by Robert Hill to perhaps have a conversation informally about issues. Consulted with Pete, consulted with Mike Hargraves, Chad and Lisa and I had an excellent meeting, and communicated through Todd that perhaps it would be best for Chad, Lisa, and I to have kind of an informal get-together at the brew house. Robert was kind enough to text back to me that he didn't see that as being the appropriate next step. As a courtesy, I called him, thanked him for the consideration, shared with him that as a planning board member, I really wasn't at liberty to talk outside of channels. And he shared with me that it appears that Riptide is in negotiation with the town attorneys in terms of hopefully presenting a more global development plan that would be part of the next steps in terms of what Riptide is proposing to do within Sea Trails. And that was the extent of our conversation.
Okay. Any other comments? I guess staff comments wasn't added to this list, but okay. Anyone need a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The meeting is adjourned at 10:14.